5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA online at the Big1050.com, 9 o'clock hour on Thursday mornings. You know what we do. You know how we get down. It is the MGoBlog Roundtable with the MGoBlog crew. And you think you get to the off season, basketball season gets over.
What
Nothing,
off season?
nothing to talk about, right? Not when the NCAA is around, fellas. Always something to talk about when it comes to the University of Michigan. Joining me as they do every single Thursday around this time, the crew from MGoBlog, starting with the man that started it all over at the blog, Brian Cook. Brian, good morning. How are you?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
Doing great, my man. Seth, how are you at the moment, my friend?
I'm good at the moment. I got my colonoscopy coming up tomorrow, but I'm good at the moment.
Give it a couple hours.
Yeah. I took my daughter yesterday down after school. I took her down to Detroit, and we went to the park at the corner, which I don't know if anyone's been there. You know where Tiger Stadium used to be. They did a magnificent job. And like as a Tiger fan, as a kid, like being on that field and just kind of staring at it, I was kind of emotional. It's a gorgeous park. It's it's a beautiful day. We had Green Dot Stables. Man, I got to get down to Detroit more often. It was beautiful.
Yeah, they've done such a great job. Great job down there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Craig Ross, Cleveland fan that he is, but a Detroit area transplant. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. I'm sort of mixed between rooting for Cleveland teams and Detroit teams. I will not.
I will let you get on the Tigers bandwagon if you want.
No,
if you want, I got a spot right next to me.
No,
I've been reserving this space for some. If you would
No.
like to get on the Tiger bandwagon,
no.
we've got Calavito.
Yeah, you got Calavito. I resent that still.
You got Travis Fryman. All right,
and-
there's space right here.
No, I'm rooting for the Gandhis and their passive resistance, and I'm staying with them. The Lions have convinced me over the last 5 years that it's more fruitful and less aggravating than rooting for the wretched Cleveland Browns and the worst owner in sports. But okay.
Well, I got some news for you for the history of Lions fandom, but you are welcome to join me on the Tigers.
No.
I got a spot for you right here.
No.
All right, fellas. So, man, a lot to unpack this week. The first, in the order of events, the first thing that happened was Santa Ono stepping down to go to the University of Florida. So let's talk about things in the order of their occurrence. So when you heard, Brian, that Santa stepped down and decided to go to Florida, were you surprised? And then B, your thoughts on how that will affect things moving forward from an athletic standpoint, if you think that Michigan will prioritize finding someone similarly inclined as far as how the presidency looks upon athletics.
I mean, I just don't think it matters. Like the thing that just leaps out to me is like, why would anyone pay this mediocrity $3 million a year? Like, like honestly, like, okay, his biggest accomplishment here is that he didn't text someone about a knish. Like, good job, but that's like honestly, the ratio of salary that goes to administrators versus the people who are actually doing the teaching at this university is ridiculous. And Santa Ona was a pretty excellent example of that. Because he went around and he shook some hands, but like, what did he do? I don't know what he did. Like, there's no, I don't know. Like, they're just gonna get another guy or possibly a woman who's been an administrator at a school, and it's just going to be the same thing over and over again. Like, they replaced Dave Brandon, and the athletic department is more or less being run like Dave Brandon would run it. Now, he's like, Ward Manuel didn't alienate Jim Harbaugh, and he's not the worst person in the world. So there have been some improvements, but overall, like, it just feels like the same stuff. So there's no personal touch. It's just like, okay, we got to do what everybody else is doing. We don't want to make Michigan some to be unique. We just want to do the things that everybody else is doing, so that in our PowerPoints we can say that we're doing the things everyone else is doing. It's a really uninspired way to run any organization, and I feel like over the years, Michigan's upper administration has sort of proven itself to be mediocre, and that's going to continue.
Seth?
Yeah, man. Like, the guy's taking the $3 million job from a $1.2 million job. The fact that people are trying to make this whole about a political situation is no. The guy's going from Michigan to Florida for $3 million.
He is the level of coward who goes to Florida and then takes his name off something he signed 2 weeks ago.
That's true.
That man is a coward.
That's true. But I mean,
he's a very rich coward, but that's who he is.
Yeah, and I think that's the point of who he was. This guy, people liked him a lot because he made promises to everyone, right? As soon as you talked to him, he told you exactly what you wanted to hear. But not everyone wanted the same thing. So eventually that was going to come due. And I think, his popularity, you could see it kind of dive off a cliff after 1 or 2 years.
Well,
just because he was
there were some things that were kind of outside of his control, right?
Right.
Right. Gaza protesters protesting University of Michigan's actions and demanding that they divest from companies like Intel because they sell computers in Israel. Those protesters were not seeking a solution. They were seeking to be heard, but not by the university administration, because their demands were ludicrous. So
yes,
no matter what no matter what he did in that situation, people were going to be furious at him. But there's a moment here to stand up for academic freedom. There's a moment here to stand up for the principles of the university that you apparently work for. And he hightailed it out of town and said, whoops, I don't actually believe in academic freedom on the way out. And it's like, why were we paying this guy 7 figures? Why are we paying any of these people 7 figures? I don't get it.
I can't echo that strongly enough. I mean, I talked to a number of people over the last few days, mostly older people because I'm old, and they all said, well, I had a pretty good feeling about Ono. And I said, well, why is that? He said, well, because he's so visible. And he was visible, and that's a good thing. And it's one of the mistakes maybe that I think Ward has made that he's rectifying, incidentally. I think Ward's problem was there was such an incredible lack of transparency within the athletic department. And so people were always willing to ascribe to him the worst possible either motivations or abilities at doing his job. But I think he's moving in the other way on that. He's had a couple of good interviews, and good for him. But Ono was visible, but there's been obviously problems between him and the regents. He did not want to stand up for academic freedom. That looks pretty obvious. And what's most obvious about it is that where did he go? He went to the University of Florida that academic freedom in that state has long since evaporated with their governor. And they're a book burning state. They're a limitation of thought state. And that university is controlled by the book burner in chief. And so when he went there, he showed absolutely nothing to me in terms of courage, standing up for academic freedom. It is woeful. And Brian said it. He said there's a moment. I mean, he was in a hard spot. I'm not saying this was easy. But maybe that's why he got paid his $1.2 million, because it isn't easy. But there's a moment to stand up for academic freedom, and he did not. He wimped out. And so, in my opinion, not the opinion of WTKA, my opinion.
I was going to say that. Did he? Was it wimping out, or was it in line with his position? It's not wimping.
Well, if it's in line with his position, it's even worse.
He's never stated a position.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what annoyed me about the over politicizing of this. For saying that he took a stand. He didn't take a stand. He took a job.
Well, so here's
Yeah.
a couple things. Let's start off first
Yeah.
with sort of nuking any notion that folks may have had about this being in any way tied to athletics, because you saw that immediately coming from outside, from obvious sources, that he's leaving because he's running away from what's coming, this hammer that's coming from the NCAA.
No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That was utterly ridiculous. And so
I mean,
what I got immediately from folks internally was that as much as it may not be in line with what you're thinking, Seth, was that this was a highly political decision. Money was huge, of course. You got to get $3 million, make no mistake, because he had been pushing for a new contract for a while, which he eventually got here at Michigan, got that new contract. But this highly politicized environment with some very polarizing decisions.
I'm not. I want to clarify. I am not downplaying the level to which, if he stayed at Michigan, he was going to have to take a stand, and that's part of being at Michigan. We are the top public university in the country. We are the number one school that you're going to look at. If you want to say liberal schools and a bastion of liberalism in the most liberal country in the world, which invented this whole freaking idea of this is where it's at. Michigan is going to be one of those places where you're going to have to say something. You can't just sit on the sideline and watch it all play out. And he was in that position. What I'm saying is he didn't take a stand. He didn't say, like, this is okay. He said, I don't want any part of this. And I think there's a difference between saying, I can't take the heat, versus I believe that it's okay for the president to come in and start telling the university whether they can do this or that. And I think people are misunderstanding what the argument was about. It wasn't just about their DEI program. This was about the definition of DEI from the White House is very different than the definition of DEI from the University of Michigan.
well,
And I
so
think that they understood that very clearly when that came down.
that DEI decision was already in process before Trump ever got elected.
Mhm.
And university was looking at the money they spent on it and the results they got from it, and they made a decision that I don't necessarily think was based on the current political climate, because there's been this crazy administrative bloat in universities where 20, 30 years ago you'd have one administrator for 30 students, and now you have one administrator for 5 students. Don't quote me on those numbers, but you have to start looking at, like, okay, well, what is this doing for our equity versus, like, how much are we charging people? Like, what can we do with this money that might be more effective? Like, increase the level of the MGoBlog guarantee, build dorms, like have places for people to live where we can have lower income students on campus, which has been a huge problem for Michigan, especially ever since affirmative action was outright banned. So to me, I don't necessarily think that's relevant to this decision. I think that's something that is separate, and I know a lot of people are frustrated by it. I know a lot of people are upset by it, but personally, I feel like that money might be better spent on teachers, might be better spent on lowering tuition for students that need it to be lowered. And people can disagree about that, and that's fine. But, like, I don't necessarily think that ties in with this. I just go back to the thing is that he signed a statement about academic freedom 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago,
Right.
he was on board with this, and now he's not. And it's like
Right.
that really shows you, that's an insight into his character or lack thereof.
Right. And so your DEI argument, so I'm not gonna argue on the merits of DEI or not, but your argument certainly seems to be very different than his. Just even from the standpoint of what you just said. So 2 weeks ago, he signs this letter that all these university presidents have signed, and the moment that he makes a transition to another university, now he writes in to take his name off.
Like, does he believe in anything, or is he just doing what he feels like he should do to get his $3 million or his $1.2 million from Michigan. Like,
So
just a guy with no principles. And I think the unfortunate thing about this moment in American history is we're finding out that a large number of very rich people don't have a spine. Like there are law firms rolling over, and like I mean, like
so
yeah.
the long and the short of it is this decision had nothing to do with sports. That
No.
was very, very, very clear. I will say this: how visible he was in his support, I think that was significant. Now, how substantive was that support? I think there was some function to it. I think that there was.
I mean, does it? I'm not sure it matters that much. Like we've had university presidents who are kind of like, oh, gross sports, and you know,
Whistle.
the athletic department was still the athletic department. Like
Mhm.
I'm not sure how much Ono's purported impact even was in that department. Because like, okay, we have the guy who's supportive of sports, and like, so can Michigan change its admission programs to like, get some of these exceptional players in? No. Did
I
they
think
stand up for Jim Harbaugh on the TRO hearing? No.
I think
So
I think from a fundraising standpoint and setting the parameters of how the university from a fundraising perspective plays in the sandbox, because at the end of the day, these could be seen as competing entities. Fundraising for the university versus donations to NIL. You already have that issue just with intra fundraising entities as it is, whether you're athletics versus the medical school. I mean, these are all places or schools that are competing for the same dollar essentially. And now you throw in NIL coming in trying to tap into the same spigot. If you have a president that is valuing athletics in that way and is telling those donors, hey, this is an important thing to value too, I think there's some significance to that.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that a lot of that is just driven by the individual donors themselves not wanting to watch Michigan check in with the 145th best passing attack in a 134 list of 134 teams. So like to some extent, I guess you could see some cross pressures. But the other thing is if this House settlement does come into effect, which is probably going to happen, but there's some bumps in the road, the external NIL collective might be actually kind of a thing of the past because they're going to run all these deals through an audit so that you can't just, PSG your way through like, oh, we got Emirates Airlines who wants to support, Michigan's running back. So those kind of deals, like there's been articles about how people are rushing to get people paid before the settlement comes into effect because it's really going to restrict your ability to pay above and beyond what the actual NIL value of a particular player would have.
That's really interesting. So you think to some extent true NIL is dead? Or maybe.
I don't exactly know. There's like part of the settlement is that like Deloitte is going to review all these deals to make sure that they're on the up and up. Now, that doesn't mean that a school like Michigan, I mean, they probably have some people high up in, companies that might spend money on athletes, but what they're not going to be able to do is give people like $2 million for holding a sausage and being like, eat this sausage. Yeah, and then they're done.
In other words, the NIL deals have to be like Livy Munn. They have to be
real.
Yeah, but
real.
But Livy Dunn showing up and holding the sausage. And that could be worth $50,000.
Right.
That's the thing. Who knows what? Yeah.
But it's going to be more difficult to be like, okay, freshman offensive lineman, here's your $50,000 or $500,000 from the NIL collective. That's going to be harder to pull off. Now, I don't know, like exactly how enforceable this is going to be because the NCAA gets sued every day about everything. There's someone suing now about the 5-year eligibility clock. So at some point, Congress is going to have to step in and provide them a limited antitrust exception that allows them to enforce some rules. Because right now, the pendulum is swung so far the other way with unlimited transfers. People are trying to play college basketball till they're 37. Like there's going to have to be some sort of intervention here, and that's probably going to codify the House settlement and maybe shape it in some ways. So there's some uncertainty going forward about this, but as far as Michigan is positioned vis-a-vis like Santa Ono versus another president, I don't really think it matters that much.
I think it matters now to have the conversation because obviously we have to have a presidential search, and the questions are going to come up. What are we going to value in a presidential search? And one of them is going to have to. We're going to want somebody who believes that money towards athletics is going to be good for the entire school. Because we talked about like, oh, what's the split, right? Should you do 75% academics?
I mean, but like, I
don't. What's the like?
I don't think it matters because I think people are going to show up. They're going to be like, I want to give money to athletics, and they're not going to say no.
Right?
Be like, get out of here. Yeah.
Right. I think it's more coming from the
So-and-so.
other side, right? It's more coming from the people who were getting the money before, worried about losing money to the athletic side. But I agree that it's really going to be more the donors decide what they want to give money to. As far as what you can get out of the president, though, it's hot. I mean, the NCAA is still going to exist, and it's still going to probably anytime they investigate Michigan, it's probably going to be a terrible investigation. So it's also someone who's going to navigate that. And I think that athletics, if we don't make it a part of the conversation, say what we want in a president for athletics, then it's not going to be a major part of the conversation because they have a lot more going on at Michigan than athletics.
And I think you have to, while there may be a desire, I don't discount what you're saying, Brian, that you're going to have people who decide, hey, I love Michigan football, Michigan basketball, Michigan hockey. I want to give to that. There's a different level of giving now that you have NIL. So is the amount of money that people have to give finite, or are they going to give more? In many instances, it's finite. And so they have to decide, am I going to direct this money the same place that I've been directing, or am I going to split it now? And your president, whoever he or she may be, coming in and saying, you know what, athletics is an important aspect of this university, and encouraging that kind of split and saying, hey, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how to make up this other money elsewhere. I think that is an important thing to have. And I think, that the fundraisers and Michigan being what it is, I think they will be able to make up that money.
Well, yeah, I mean, all it's going to take is like a loss here or a loss there, and people are going to be like, we got to fix this. Like, right? Like that's what happened. Like everybody was like, had the gloves on, and they were like, all right, we're going to like dip our toe into NIL. And then last football season happened, and all of a sudden it's like, Yaxel, come on, let's go. So I think it'll be fine. Like, I think, and the other thing is that Michigan seemingly has a pretty good set of like revenue coaches, and I'm going to include hockey in there. For the long run, there's not going to be a whole lot of turnover, I think, in the athletic department for a minute here. So whoever comes into this new president probably isn't going to be facing any sort of significant decisions for a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I got
Sam, it makes me wonder. Would Jordan? Maybe you should contact Jordan Acker, or maybe Seth Hood.
Yes, my idea is, I mean, I want to have all of the, as much as it was to talk about it, but I've been planning to have Jordan back on, but Mike as well. It's starting to have a rotation of this is a great time to have Regents on to kind of talk about the search process, not necessarily who they're looking at as much as they talk about the process.
Well, the search process is going to be what it is every time. They hire a company, they come up with a list of names that are algorithmically approved.
Yeah, but that's not really how it happens.
You pick an uninspiring person from the uninspiring list. You know who should be the next president of the University of Michigan? Sam Webb.
Ooh, I'm in.
You know what? You know what?
No, everybody likes Sam
1.2
Webb.
million.
Put it like this: there's a whole there's a whole. Well, I won't even say that. There's a lot of people that don't like me.
Yeah, but they're all Michigan State and Ohio State fans.
Would like some of my
Who
politics.
cares that Tom Izzo hates you?
Yeah, that's a positive.
Athletic director of Michigan State, Tom Izzo, I should add.
Yeah.
That really it's not the way it works though. The way it works is the people who want to be candidates like have their people reach out to Michigan and say, I want this, right? And there's a bunch of like former politicians and whatnot, like names that everyone knows who are like trying to like jump in because that position, I know, you know, Santa is like, oh, I don't want to have to make a decision. But when you don't have to make a decision, that's a really plum job, that presidency of Michigan. And
Well,
even though you have to deal with everyone's
not-
had to deal with. When we were in school, we had to deal with those people on the either sides too, and politicizing the job. But like of all the jobs that you could have at that level, you know, it's like a lot of people want the job.
well, yeah, it pays
Yeah.
7 figures, Seth. That's
Right.
a pretty high salary.
It's not just that; it's a high prestige position.
Well,
Your
I
name's
mean,
in the paper.
But what they need to do is they need someone who will display a spine. And like, it's possible
Yeah.
that the federal government will come after the University of Michigan and try to take funding away from various things. And you need to stand up. You need to be like, this is not right. This is not what we're doing. And the Michigan community will support you. Like, I get a little letter from Michigan every year being like, hey, would you like us to give us more money on top of the tuition? And I'm always like, no,
Well,
I do not want to do that. But
there were definitely faculty that were a lot of faculty were advocating for Michigan to take such a stand. But again, was that in line with the president's position?
well, no, I mean, that's clear now, right?
Right.
Like he said
Exactly.
some things because that was the position he was in, and then as soon as he had an opportunity, he decamped for, as Craig accurately stated, a state that is like you have to be a Quisling to go work at the University of Florida right now as their president.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. Quisling is the right word.
So
And-
I mean, this needs to be said that it's not just words whether Michigan stands up or not. They have an incredible amount of this university. A lot of it is funded by, research grants, and that's not Michigan that caused that. The government came to Michigan and says, we want you and your abilities to, work on things like cancer for us because Americans don't like cancer. And this was they asked us
apparently
again,
about
like,
30% of the
take care of it.
population does
yeah.
Well, it's
pro cancer.
I didn't say everybody, but the majority of Americans wanted to have this kind of taken care of for. And there's a lot of technology that's been directed from the federal government, and it comes down to Michigan. And if that gets pulled overnight, that is a devastating thing to the university. Absolutely devastating. They don't have the financial way to handle
I mean,
it.
the realistic thing is that this is going to happen, but it's going to happen whether you stand up or not, because these people are destroying every institution in American society for their own purposes. I do not understand what is going on, like why anyone would single out like the Park Service, which makes money. They spend $4 billion a year and they bring in $50 billion, and it's like we need to cut this too. I mean, government is currently being run by morons, and that is going to impact the University of Michigan whether you stand up or not. So stand up.
Right on. Right on. Truer words never spoken. So anyway, get Jordan Acker on. I mean, I'll give Jordan Acker one piece of credit. I think this was at Seth's urging. He called me one morning about 6:30 a.m. I was asleep, and I thought, what the hell is a regent calling me for? And he wanted to argue with me about about the TRO. And I said, and we got into it. And I said, no. This TRO is getting granted with Harbaugh. I know it's getting granted. I know the attorneys involved very well. You got Harbaugh's attorney, I'll name him, Bruce Wallace, probably the best attorney Ann Arbor's ever had. And the people working with him were smart, and they were all confident. And we all knew the judge too, and we knew what was happening. And Acker and his group was was apparently terrified somehow about going forward, which I could not figure out. However, bigger deal to me was the fact that Acker called me to argue about it. And I thought, okay, that's a real thing. This is a real guy. So get him on and see what and see what he says.
I had Jordan on several times.
Yeah.
So,
I want to make
okay.
I want to make a point before and then we can be done with this conversation. Is when I was talking about like the real devastation that it will cause, and Brian's right, it's going to happen regardless because of who it is. There is a power relationship here, and just doing it on our own is not going to have the same effect as if we can get as many other universities involved as possible. And right now, like it's been in the news that the faculty are all signing on to this. I don't think that the faculty have the kind of power that the administrators do. And that's who you're going to need. So you're going to not just need a president for Michigan when they're talking about who's going to be that, because this is going to come to a head. And they are going to have to fight this. And what happens when you get in a fight is the one with more power has more likely chance of winning. And the way that Michigan is going to increase their ability to do something about this is to have other universities involved. So you're going to need not just a president of Michigan, but someone who's going to be able to get the other Big Ten universities and other schools to sign on and actually present a united front to the point where it actually is going to hurt to do what they're going to do. And that was where I was coming from there.
Gotcha. All right. So that was the first part of the week. The second part of the week, and we'll discuss this on the other side of the break, was the ESPN report that said that Michigan has decided to suspend Sharon Moore for 2 games next season, self-imposed punishment, and in response to the notice of allegations in the Stallions case. More accurate to call it a proposed punishment. They have not rendered a final verdict, a final decision on a punishment. But your reaction to that proposed punishment, we will get to that on the other side, fellas. Your take and what direction you think the NCAA is going to go in response. We'll get to that on the other side here on the Michigan Insider MGoBlog Roundtable on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com.
Clear on the radio.
So maybe the NCAA can do right by Michigan for once, or in this, by bringing Jamal Crawford back for another season. Now that, I mean, he has a stronger argument than just about anybody, and I know he would do it. I know he would come back. So bring back Jamal Crawford. Free Jamal Crawford. That's what I say.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Get to some of these messages here. And yeah, listen, we gotta
Don't read the messages on this
Yeah,
one.
why you remember what we were just talking about? What are you going to do on the message board?
Yeah, it's hard to have this discussion not be political.
I want to give credit to the MGO board though, because up until a certain point, and a guy who was well known for doing this, everyone pretty much did a good job of having like this debate from a debate standpoint, like trying to reach a consensus instead of just yelling and talking over each other.
I agree with you. I read through that.
Yeah, that's pretty surprising in 2025 to have that kind of conversation on a message board that's not filled with people who are all politically aligned. Although I do watch our numbers, by the way, and we've gone from, I think, about 45 when I first started, watching what our numbers are, to 75-25. And we haven't lost anybody. So
wait, that's 55-45. What
55 blue, 45 red.
Oh, okay. How do you know that? Just on the
Google Analytics. They track this stuff religiously. Yeah.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
Yeah, and we've had a massive shift without shifting people. So what that means is the people who read MGoBlog have largely shifted from red or purple to blue in the last 10 years or so.
I mean, that checks out with everything else, because it's like now, the Republicans are the the party of the uneducated, to quote current president.
Well, you just can't you just Hillaried yourself.
I don't care. I don't care. Like, if you voted for Trump, I don't care. Like, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. You are the dumbest person on the planet.
Oh God, is that true? But I didn't say that. That was Brian Cook. Oh man.
Back on radio in about 90 seconds, guys.
Like, we already did it once. We already did all of this before. What were you expecting?
By the way, Scott, hey, listen, I have had Jordan. I think I've had Jordan on at least 3 times. But I do need to have the other regents on. So I've talked to Mike Beam about it. I'm going to put invitations out to all the regents, as a matter of fact. Been working on trying to put together a series. So
yeah,
that is something that's been on the agenda. Anyway, even before this. It's a great
idea. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I do like seeing the numbers, because if you just look at message boards and just look at people saying things on on your whatever social media of choice, you don't really get a snapshot of what people believe. And I think that there is a with Brian, I agree that there's a
Back in about 10 seconds,
educational shift in the makeups of the parties, and we've definitely seen it with MGoBlog's readership.
All right, guys, we're back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the big1050.com. Before we get back to a riveting MGoBlog Roundtable this morning, and thank you for those who are in the chat who haven't gone too far off the deep end, even though there was a discussion that got somewhat political.
Sorry, Sam.
It got somewhat political.
I got some stuff to get off my chest, I guess.
What
commercial breaks are for, Brian. You're good.
You're good. You're all good at the commercial. I'm talking before we went to the commercial break. Folks they've navigated that discussion without getting too too far in one direction or the other.
I did that, and I'm not backing down about that.
You should. Hey, I'm proud of you. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm not afraid of. I don't care.
Yeah.
All right, folks. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, you should get on board with Brighton Ford. Go to BrightonFord.com. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD to make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. That's where John Cuter and his great crew will take great care of you with deals that can't be beat, like the one on the 2025 Bronco Sport Big Bend, $328 a month, $3,500 down, or $421 a month with $500 down. Or how about the 2025 Ford Explorer, $377 a month, $3,500 down, or $467 a month with $500 down. And last but not least, the award-winning pickup, #1 truck in America for almost 50 years running, the 2025 Ford F-150 XLT, $257 a month with $3,500 down, or $389 a month with $500 down. For those and other great deals, get on board with Brighton Ford. We're going to BrightonFord.com. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD to make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. So with that, folks, guys, let's get back to the discussion. This time, though, shifting over to the latter part of the week. And that is the talk at the ESPN report. I think it was Wetzel and Thamel. They said that Michigan had decided to suspend Sharon Moore for 2 games, the Central Michigan and Oklahoma games, a self-imposed punishment. This is,
I think
no, that's wrong.
4th game. Sam.
Yeah, not. It's the opener, I think, isn't it?
No, it's
the
games
3rd and
3 and
4th
4.
3 and 4. Okay.
yeah, it's Central Michigan and Nebraska, right?
Yeah.
Central
Games
Michigan,
3 and
right.
4.
Yeah, Central Michigan and Nebraska. I decided to submit for Central CMU and Nebraska in response to the Stallions case. Upon checking, because that story actually where we were still here. Upon checking, I was told by two sources that is by no means what they have decided, that is not final. This is very much a part of the back and forth process with the NCAA, where you have proposed punishment, what you might do. You get feedback from the NCAA. You're able to calibrate what you're gonna maybe impose, even before, or what you plan to present, even before you go to in front of the committee on infractions. And then, hey, coming out of the committee, the meeting with the committee on infractions, you could decide to do something together, altogether different, which actually Dan Wetzel said in his interview with Rich Eisen. He said, hey, you know what, Michigan could decide to rescind this whole thing, which is not what they said in the article, but you get my point. Let's talk about this from the standpoint, though, of the proposed punishment, Brian.
Okay.
What would you think of this as the sort of, if this were to settle it, would you be okay? Would this be a satisfactory conclusion to this whole ordeal, or do you think this is too much and you fight till the hilt? They shouldn't serve any games. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. Like, the way that this historically goes is you self-impose some, generally not that meaningful punishment, and the NCAA is like, okay, and then you move on. So you kowtow to the power, and then they're like, okay, you did that, and then they let you live your life. So if that's what's going to happen here, okay, fine. I don't necessarily think this is really relevant to the larger discussion. We've seen, the NCAA like cut a deal with Clinkscale and Minter about whatever they did, and so there's like two different issues here. There's like these personal punishments, like Jim Harbaugh's going to get a show cause until the heat death of the universe, that don't necessarily, I mean, they're part of the investigation, but it's not really relevant to whatever kind of institutional level things that the NCAA will do. And I don't see that they can possibly do anything relevant given their history, given the fact that the NCAA president himself said that, they want it fair and square, and, vacation of records is something they only do when someone's ineligible, and they're not going to find that someone is ineligible. So Michigan won't have to vacate anything, and they'll have to pay a fine. And it's just like, we're just talking about all this stuff, and it just keeps dragging on, and nothing is going to happen because there's no precedent for the NCAA doing anything seriously in a case like this. So I just kind of want to, we should be able to move on with our lives at this point. That's where I am.
I understand, but like, man, that's what they always do, right? They always drag these out, and part of the punishment in the NCAA's mind is to drag it out as long as possible.
I don't necessarily think that's the case. I just think that these investigations take a long time and they have to be taken seriously, but it's just another like little news article, and we just move on and fine, like whatever.
I mean, Thamel wants this to be a big deal because he's
all right. Can we stop with the conspiracy stuff? That's two in a row.
Not because of conspiracy. I'm saying when you're reading Thamel, I'm reading Thamel on the understanding that he wants to have a story right now. Right? That's what Thamel's up to when he's writing his story. When we look at whether Michigan should suspend Sharon Moore for 2 games, he deleted emails off his phone. He deleted the text off his phone. He deleted all the text off his phone, as I understand it, not just the Counter Stallions.
Correct.
The timing of it is suspect. Now, if he regularly does this, right, and on the first of every month he deletes all the text from his phone, and this was deleting all the text on the phone on the first of the month, and that's what this was about, then that doesn't warrant a suspension. If it's not regular, then it's too suspicious. Now he's your head coach, even though he wasn't at the time. And even though, yes, he would have known they could recover all the text, that deleting it, whatever it is, it still looks bad. And part of this is that part of the job that he has now is to not have it look like he's trying to hide things, right? Is to demonstrate for everyone that transparency for power is a massively important thing. considering the things we talked about today, even more important than ever. So I think that it does warrant a suspension. I looked into this. The NCAA does not allow you to do the Urban Meyer suspension anymore, where you just, doesn't show up for the game, but is there the whole week. So it would be he would be suspended from the, the game plans and everything. And Nebraska's going to be a big game. Nebraska's going to be a better team this year. So it's not a nothing punishment. I think that it's fair given the climate today, the responsibility that he has, and most importantly, transparency is important. You can't, delete texts. You have to have, if you're a public official, you should have this information available all the time. Now, like I said, if he does it regularly, it's not a foul. Then they're just then that's just a witch hunt, right? And then they're just using something that sounds bad when it really wasn't. But if he did this, whatever. I know that he knew that it was still existed. It shouldn't be a massive punishment, but I think 2 games is fine.
Yeah, I mean, as a pragmatic matter, the issue to me is who leaked this. I mean, is the leaking coming from Michigan? Is it coming from the NCAA? If it's coming from Michigan, fine. Take your 2-game suspension, move on. Excuse me. If it's coming from the NCAA, then take your two-game suspension. If it's Michigan leaking it and the NCAA is saying, that's, we're nowhere near that. Then it's another matter. And I would suspect that Sharon isn't going to like it. I think Sam has said as much, and that he's not going to agree to that. Look at it this way. Let's say James Franklin deleted all his texts, and somebody came in and said, hey, you deleted all your texts. He said, so what? What's the crime? And of course, there isn't one. Well, to me, it's sort of the same here. Sharon deleted texts, which were later recovered, and apparently, as far as we know, showed nothing. So what? What's the crime? What is the crime here? The crime is sign stealing. Ain't a crime. And so I'm having a hard time with even the 2-game suspension. But if it gets rid of it, and this is what's the NCAA is floating, okay, fine, whatever. But I have a hunch that's not what's going on here. I have a hunch that somehow Michigan is floating it, and the NCAA is saying, no, wait a second here. You're going to have to do more than that. And so the facts are everything, though, as Seth points out. If in fact this is just a routine dumping of texts, and that's all that's going on, then it's really an absurdity.
Yeah. The floating it to what end, though? I don't think that if you're Michigan, what are you trying to if someone from Michigan was floating it as some sort of trial balloon?
Yes.
A trial balloon to what end? I mean, what is some level of public support going to pressure the NCAA?
No, I think they could be floating it just to see how does it play with Michigan fans? How does it play with, others, within the Michigan community to see how it goes.
But,
Does that, I don't know. Why is it being leaked at all? Because obviously someone is.
True. And getting to the bottom of that is certainly something that would be a priority for me, and trying to discover the motives there, because it has certainly been a nuisance, if not a problem. But in this particular instance, it does not jibe with it does not jibe with what I'm hearing as far as the principles involved in the actual process. The need to float this part of the process at this point in time. Float this kind of detail. What I sense is what you said initially. There's this, you have the merits of what was actually found versus being pragmatic. We can get it over with. Right. Now, if you're Sharon Moore, just putting myself in his shoes for a moment, I think he's thinking, I delete my texts. I didn't delete Connor Stallion's texts. I deleted my texts.
Right.
Months and months of texts, period. Now I didn't just go through and say, "Oh, these are all my texts from Connor." That's not what happened, right? And so after I deleted all my texts, I said, "Oh wait, they want my Connor Stallions text." I went and I recovered the Connor Stallions text before they went and they had to do all their imaging and all of that they say they were doing. And there's an optics thing that's making it as bad as it may be, and people may say it is. There's the optics of people making it seem like I went and deleted Connor Stallion's text, and then you had to hire some investigative firm to come and recover them. When what really happened was I deleted all my texts. Then I realized, okay, this is an error. Let me recover the Connor Stallion's text, which they were. You got them, and then you saw it, nothing was there. Hey, why am I being suspended? Why am I being
That's exactly it. I mean, you just hit it. And so the only reason to do it is to get it over with.
Right.
That's it.
And I think that's the view from on high as we get out of here is, the view on high is, hey, to get this over with, they want their pound of flesh, they want to, set a standard. They say there's a process to this. You don't delete text. Hey, 2 games would maybe get us out of here. If it does, then if it gets it over with, then maybe it's worth it. But we're out of time. We can pick this up next week if it's not over by the
I just want the point of my whole thing is I want the facts, right? Let's get those out there because this is not the facts. This is what's coming through the NCAA from the league thing, right? Like, give us facts.
All right, we got to get out of here, folks.
All right.
See ya. We'll see you next time on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA online at thebig1050.com.
The comments today are fun.
Are they really? Good.
Hey, Sam, I just sent you an email.
Okay. What's
You
it?
have 3 OCWCs.
I know I got HSI to do. I got to do that.
3 fresh Brighton copies, but I condensed it down basically to 1 because the only thing that changes in the middle is the offer. So the open and the close is the same. So I just put the offers all together. So you have to basically it's 1 read, but I got to get those done now.
Okay.
So I can get them recorded. So
Brian,
right,
you want
guys.
to break in the podcast before you go?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know, man.
It's up
I
to
mean-
I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to talk about academic freedom right now. You can say
Well,
what you want to say.
Like, I don't know. I think people should say it. So
So you
put
want
it
me
in
to
there.
export these and send them to you, Ira, or how do you want me to
yeah,
do
if you
it?
want to do that and just send it to me, that's great.
Okay.
That'd
I'll
be
do
great.
that. I'll
All right,
do
cool.
that. All right.
Sounds good. I'll get them in a little bit. Thanks, Sam.
Later, guys.
See you guys.